Yeah, let's talk about Hubie.
Hubie's a dog.
Yeah,
That's what I learned
he
this
got that
weekend.
dog in him.
He's got that dog in him. Yeah, he
Yeah, so I
does.
only I only heard about this briefly, but fill us in for what you know
All
at
right.
least.
So Al, cut me off with questions. I'm gonna try to give you the chronological breakdown of
Yeah,
what has happened here. So, to those who don't know, I mean, you have to know. Andrew Huberman is a like science communicator, kind of health and fitness podcaster. He's also been a guest on tons of podcasts. Basically, like lifestyle fitness content is what he creates. But no, that's not entirely true. It's largely like uh, biohacking, kind of like how to get the most out of your body, optimizing. He packages all of these little tips and tricks up into something he calls protocols. That's kind of the term he coined.
dopamine and cold plunging.
All that stuff. Yes, exactly. So he goes into the science of how all those things work. So to just give you a little bit of background on Huberman, he self reportedly grew up in a somewhat broken home. Both of his parents were fairly successful. They got divorced when he was, I think, like 13 or 14. And apparently that divorce was very, very hard on him. He said, this was his description, that he was like neglected from that point on. Like neither of his parents were really involved with him much. Um, he occasionally would like couch surf at friends' houses, but largely he would like spend most of his time skateboarding. And so he kind of got through high school. By the way, 14 is usually when you go to high school. So this is like him high school onward. He was just a skateboarder, met a lot of people in that community. He also claimed that he kind of like lived on the streets a little bit. And I think that what he means is like probably, stayed with some of his skater friends, maybe even people that didn't even like have actual homes, probably did some couch surfing. Said he got into lots of fights. One time he had to go to juvie, so he went to like a juvenile detention center for a little bit. And he said he witnessed, people kill themselves in this juvie place. And he basically said he had a pretty tough childhood, and then eventually kind of got brought back into academia by his dad, who was also a Stanford professor. And he ended up, going to college, getting a PhD, and then ended up working at Stanford as a researcher and professor. So what happened recently, right? So actually, just after that, recently, I think like a few years ago, like middle of 2021, he launched his podcast during the pandemic. And it was a hit. Lots of people loved it. He was on Rogan, and then from there it was all up. Um, Okay, so what happened recently? So it was kind of funny, in my opinion, a little bit funny, because the story is like basically one of infidelity. He was cheating, also lying to his partners. Supposedly, this is all alleged. So I'll give that disclaimer. Disclaimer: this is all alleged. Um, New York Magazine put out a piece, a really long article. You guys can probably go find it. They should give me a sponsorship. I'm running traffic to their website. Basically, they talk about how Huberman, back in 2014, he met this woman, who I'll call Sarah. That's not her real name. That's what the name they use in the article. Sarah basically was Huberman's girlfriend. She had two kids from a past relationship, and Huberman met her. She was a very health conscious person, very into fitness, very into eating right, and they were in this long-term relationship. And after Huberman's podcast kind of takes off, or no, not even after. So he's still a professor. His podcast hasn't even launched yet, and he's seeing this woman Sarah, and something else happens, which I'll jump back onto later. But kind of fast forward, his podcast launches, gets a ton of notoriety, meets tons of people, becomes really famous, known as like by the bros. I think he's known as like there's some term they gave him, but by the ladies, there's hashtag Daddy Huberman. So like he's like admired by
Yeah,
all
he had a
people.
really good brand until I guess
Great brand
until now. Yeah,
until then. Okay, so let me tell you what supposedly happened while he was dating this woman Sarah. Um, And in the article, they allege that Huberman has like anger issues, and he's this really like rage-filled person. He's very mean to to Sarah, his girlfriend, but they're always like sort of fighting and then working through their problems. And somewhere along the way, in this relationship, which is many many years, right? I think like at this point, it would be probably, if they were still together now, which they're not. I think they probably broke up like a year ago. So like let's say they were together for 7 years or 8 years, even 9 years. They've been together for a long time. All the while, Huberman has been stacking up other simultaneous relationships. So let's start with number one. Um, this other woman. So Huberman worked at Stanford, but he also had like an apartment in Topanga, which is a place in California that's apparently pretty far from Stanford, where Stanford is. And um, basically, he had a girlfriend up there, and that was like a relationship he started. And um, yeah, basically had a relationship with this woman, and he also had a relationship with his current girlfriend, who she doesn't know that he has this other relationship. So he's balancing these two relationships fairly easily because he's got two different places where he lives. And then more details come out about this story. So he's balancing these two relationships, and then um, comes to find out that he had another girlfriend um, in somewhere else in California. And basically, what he would do is he would like say, "Oh, like I'm at work. I'm working. I can't meet you for dinner. I'm sorry." But he's actually like with his current girlfriend, and he's like on a coffee date, working through problems in their relationship. And then he like leaves that, and he goes and like has dinner, and like has relations with his other girlfriend, and they're like working through problems in their relationship, and he's like simultaneously balancing these two relationships. They don't know about each other. um, and come to find out that there's a fourth girl, there's a fifth girl, there's a sixth girl
At the same
um,
time.
at the same time. Now the remaining the latter three were in like different states. I think one was in Washington, one was in Texas, one was in New
Mhm.
York.
Okay.
um, and as he's, and these, I think the latter three were all started after his podcast launch. So he was gaining notoriety. And so he was traveling a lot, doing these tours. So he would like have girlfriends in other states where they thought he was being exclusive with them. So all of these women thought he was being exclusive with them. And he made it seem that way. And so he was having unprotected relations with all these women. And basically, Sarah, the original girl, um, later finds out that she has HPV, and she's like, "Wait, how do I have HPV? I've only, been with
Yeah.
Andrew." And it's like, why did this happen all of a sudden? Um, and Huberman's people basically said like, no, they denied that he's ever tested positive for HPV. Blah blah blah. By the way, there's no conclusive test for men for HPV, so it's hard for guys to know if they actually have it. So it's kind of an easy defense to put up. Basically, Huberman somehow, while having all of these different people on
That
his
just annoys
podcast,
me. That this guy
six
is a
relationships.
medical researcher,
Yeah.
tout being smart mofo, body smartness, and he's going around potentially having unprotected HPV. Like, come on, bro. Like, not to reveal my own medical, but like I'm vaccinated. Like, you know what I mean? Like, do your part. Like, don't be an idiot. You know what I mean? Like, that's just kind of annoying. So go ahead.
No, I think you're right. The thing that's very strange to me is like Huberman has talked about all of these types of topic, like specifically relationship topics. And so there's this guy, Dr. David Buss, who he's had on his podcast a few times. Huberman has had, and that guy is an evolutionary biologist specializing in like mate selection and mating patterns amongst humans. And
Okay.
so there's this whole like, they have multiple conversations, and one of them is really funny because literally Huberman's, it's almost like if you map it back to what Huberman is doing in his personal life, it literally seems like he's getting advice from David from David Buss. He's like, tell me how deception works in monogamous relationships, because men use it differently than women do. And David Buss responds like, yeah, so for men the typical deception strategy is like they will they will hyperbolize. They basically say that they're more interested in a long-term romantic partnership with this person. They will exaggerate the depth of their feelings for that person. And this maps up with exactly what Huberman is doing in the text messages that they released. It's like
He's just
he's
like
literally
writing notes.
saying, no, in like a few of the girls. So the crazy part about the story, and like bless these women because they actually made like a good situation out of kind of like a really shitty one for them, because he led them all on, and they literally created this chronology of his text messages with them. And there was one day in particular where they were like, holy crap, this guy's a genius. Okay, let me tell you what happened. March 21st, I think it was 2022 or something like that. March 21st, he in the morning, He had his one girlfriend at his house in Topanga. He was like, hey, why don't you stay back with my dog Costello? I got to drive into work and get some work done. Goes to work, goes to work. He actually goes to a coffee shop to meet with his other California girlfriend, has a long conversation with her about their relationship, and they work through some issues. And, you know, he's like, spilling is, they're kind of like just working through all their,
Yeah.
issues in their relationship. And then he leaves and he goes and has like dinner with his actual girlfriend, Sarah. He like, sleeps with her. And then he like leaves. And all the while he texts like the other four girlfriends throughout the day, like, hey, beautiful, hope you're having a great day, like stuff like that. So he's literally interacted with three of his girlfriends in person, slept with probably two of them, had coffee, long discussion about the relationship with the third, text the other three that are in different states. He texts them like sweet nothings over text, right? And
Mhm.
and it was crazy because they said like they matched up their text receipts, and we're like, holy crap, this one day was just like a logistical like chess game that he was doing, and he figured he made it work, and they didn't know until recently, of course.
Seems to
But
me like this is legit. Like
yeah,
this whole like unfortunately he's probably in the coffin at this point. Like that seems a bit too much just from what I'm hearing. It seems to me like it's legit. And what was I gonna add? Keep going. Yeah, sorry, I'll think of what my
yeah,
comment.
no, this is all alleged. I mean, I still think like you should. I mean, frankly, like if Huberman's giving good advice, like you should still listen to it. But it does call into question, right? Like if he's making bad decisions in his personal life and being deceitful, who knows how
Yeah.
deceitful he's being, publicly. But the thing that I find really interesting is that he has all these podcasts with David Buss, and it's like, he's asking about like deception strategies that men use, and in these women, by the way, they all have a group chat now. They're all good friends. They've met up in person. Um, they basically like compared different texts, and they were noticing like, holy crap, this one's like word for word the same thing, and it's literally like, I'm feeling really, really good about us. I think we're in a great place. I'm at the point now where I just want to settle down and have kids and a family. He's like saying this to like multiple of these women. And it's like, it's exactly what David Buss advised, was like, not even advised, but he said this is what the common male deception strategy is like exaggerating the depth of your feelings and with that person.
He's like, "Oh yes, for someone who would be, need to take notes on this," and he's just like writing notes. Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's a character flaw. It's a very big red flag, in someone who's going and showing this really intellectual front, very like wholesome front of, being honest, authentic, and and then going around and like blatantly lying to multiple women, not one, two, but apparently five or six at the same time, lying to them, leading them on emotionally, causing knowing emotional damage in the future for all of them. Like, don't get me wrong, like we all make mistakes in our personal lives, but like it's just like a very stark, just something you can't look at a dude the same way online. So I actually want to go back onto his channel and like see if he's gonna be making apology videos or whatever because dude, yeah, I mean, your
All right,
personal reputation is just thrown at that point. So I
dude.
don't know what do you think he was doing, bro. Honestly, like I guess maybe he was just an incel for so long, and he's like, I gotta like, I gotta get like as much as I can because like, I just can't get it like that, and like he's probably in such scarcity, and it says a lot about a person that they have to do that, probably a lot of insecurity and like yeah, like you said, he had problems growing up, so there's things like that.
Well,
But
honestly, here's I was thinking about this the other day, after I read it, and I was like, like just that March 21st day, and like it just having all of these things he's juggling, like not to mention the fact that his business is like it's like one of these like very sprawled out businesses, right? He's got his podcast, but he's also got all these sponsors. He's built his own podcast network, so he has like other podcasts that he now like sort of owns in his network. um I just find it so like, that sounds so challenging. And I was thinking, I was like, there's no way that someone like that, like, there's no way you can just pull this off without having had experience. So I don't think he was an incel. I think he probably got it a lot. I think he probably had no problems with women. But I think he basically, um,
yeah,
like he had experience probably cheating on girls, and he was comfortable doing it again and was upping the ante.
yeah,
And also he has more reasons. He has more of a
yeah,
like excuses of why he can't hang out with you or why he's busy right now, when he's
yeah.
actually just like hanging out with some other girl. But here's something really interesting. So one of the texts that he sent, one of the girls said something like, "Oh, I prefer relationships where the man is not monogamous, but the woman is." So he has expressed that like he does like relationship, like he prefers to be able to have many women and all those women be monogamous to him, which makes sense. So like from what he has done, obviously. Also, I mean, just for all the guys in the audience, that's probably the ideal. Just speaking for all of us, but um, I think the part that gets really gross is just like you could probably find women who are open to having that kind of
Yeah, you just
relationship
got to
with
be
you.
honest. Like for him, I mean,
Yeah.
sure, like if you're a dude and you want to like whatever, like you got to tell him like, come on, like
Right. That
he's
that's
just
where I think
lying.
it
Yeah,
becomes it
it's
turns
just
sour
sketchy.
is like if you're lying about it, then you've crossed over into being like a crappy person. Also, like you
Yeah,
can't
exactly.
sustain it, so it's
Yeah,
gonna come crumbling down at some point. So
yeah.
you're gonna hurt a lot of people. Um, anyway,
So
really, really kind of weird story. Also, it's all
sorry, Hubie.
at this point.
Yeah,
So a little bit of celebrity gossip for the pod. Oh
yeah.
man. But anyway,
What
I
do
thought it
our
was a pretty story.
Yeah. What do our
Uh,
Huberman fans think of this? Leave a comment. Unfortunately, my opinion, I think he's wrecked. Or at least he's gonna be having to do some apologizing, and trying to humbly crawl back to regain the just because like, bro, come on. Don't be like a 16-year-old dude, like, like come on, dude. Like we all looked up to you as like a humble, like smart guy, and it's like, come on. So yeah.
and
Sorry,
the
man.
thing that bothers me is he totally could like there's so many women that adore Huberman. He could have definitely found this. He could have made the exact same situation for himself work with women that were willing, like they were willing
Yeah.
participants, not going. So I
Yeah.
just think it's yeah, it's slimy in that way. But I will say this, and there actually I want to say something that's pretty interesting that he's doing. Tell me what you think of this, Al. So Huberman in the last like 36 hours has been posting on different channels all of these like posts that contain three words: Huberman, sleep, and six. So different posts, he's like upcoming podcast with this sleep expert. We're going to go over the 6 habits that you can use on a Huberman Lab podcast. So it says, so he basically what he's doing is using SEO cover up. So if he posts a lot on his thing that says Huberman six and sleep, you can't search for Huberman sleeps with 6 women. You know what I mean? So it's
Dude,
if you
that's
look it up,
actually
you'll find
that's
it,
something.
right?
This guy. That's
Anyway,
funny. That's funny.
yeah. So he's trying, or at
It's
least these
just
people are
okay.
trying.
My comment earlier that I forgot when I was shilling off is like it seems to me like oh now it's slipping away from me again. It seems to me like he's just such a different guy than what he's portraying online. It's just kind of like it's so like influencer fame and money and sex type of vibe as opposed to like this like researcher who's just like coming to the masses and like sharing his like academic research. It's just like such a
Dude,
different front. It's like a whole front. It's like you're this academic researcher, smart guy, but in the background you're like celebrity, I want the views, I'm covering up with SEO, I'm being an influencer, cool guy, sleeping with women, like broke, like it's just like that's just a whole front. I don't know. I don't like it.
well, so something else that I found really interesting, like he definitely has a very friendly, like smart, humble, innocent kind of vibe on the internet.
Yeah.
But the thing that I found really interesting was like other accounts in the article. One of them, for instance, was this guy, Scott Carney, who I think is an author. But basically, Scott details a few different accounts where Huberman basically was, saying to Scott, like, oh, hey, like, I'm going to take you on this big trip. We're going to go swim with sharks in Mexico and we're going to do this cool stuff. You have to go get this certification. It takes like 3 weeks to get the certification. You got to buy this gear and then be ready for this date, like in like 3 months or something. The day before that trip, Scott has done all of this work to get everything ready. The day before the trip, he cancels it. He just says, sorry, Scott, it's canceled. Can't do it. Cancel the trip. Something else Scott brings up. He's like, oh, Huberman and I were talking and we were like, oh, we really love, protocols, or I don't know what they were geeking about. But Huberman invited him to go on like a camping trip where they could just talk about science and stuff. And anyway, what happened was they were going to go on a 2-day camping trip. And they basically talked, okay, we need this gear. So buy this tent, buy this, canteen, buy this XYZ camping gear. And Scott does all this stuff, gets everything ready, shows up at Huberman's place on the day they were going to leave for the camping trip. And Huberman is like, oh, I got to go do something for work. and basically leaves Scott Carney in his house for a day and a half. Um, he was just with Costello, his Huberman's dog. He's just puttering around the house,
Crappy.
and then they go on like a hike. They go on a little hike, like a short hike, and so that was their camping trip. And apparently, this is very common for him. All the accounts were that he's very flaky, hard to reach, doesn't respond much. He's just like a very like ethereal entity. He like comes and goes, and you can't ever get in touch with him. Um, and like
That
you're
is
hoping
so
for like
different.
something that is actually
Yeah,
going to come through, and it never does.
that's
So
hilarious.
I mean, it kind of maps out like it's just very interesting because we don't see that side of him. He's just on podcasts.
Yep. Yep, exactly. Him being like this sketchy, flaky guy, but in all other accounts, he's very like on point, very like scheduled, humble. Like you just don't get the vibe. So it's just funny. It's a whole front to me. So yeah,
Well, I will say
sketchy.
this, Al. There's one thing I have noticed that I think is particularly like sneaky that a lot of people who aren't aware of it just don't realize. There are some people who are really, really good, and this is something else that people talk about Huberman. They say this about him. They say like when he's attentive with you, you feel like the sun is shining on you, and you are like the only thing that matters. And he's extremely attentive, and he like memorizes like things you say so much so that if you say something like a little comment, he'll bring it up 6 years later and be like, "Hey, remember when you said that thing and we talked about this whole thing?" He's got this great memory, this like really, really great memory apparently, and um, I want to make a point for the audience. Anytime you meet, like you talk with somebody or you're with somebody, maybe it's your boss, maybe it's a friend, maybe it's someone like when you're with them, you feel like so like heard and seen, and it's just this like wonderful experience. And then like it's so hard to connect with that person until that next like moment where you guys are one on one, and it's like this great experience. Just keep an eye out for those people. Keep an
Yeah.
eye out because oftentimes those people are just very, very good at charming you.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's for good reasons. I would venture to say that a lot of times if someone is charming you, they're doing it for a reason. Um, and if it's in a business setting, it's very likely the case. But watch out for those like one-time charmers. Like it's any one-on-one situations you're in, and they're super charming. Watch out for that because a lot of
Yeah.
times it's just manipulation, and they just want you to like they want to be able to get you if they ever need you for something. Like, oh yeah, like I have like this pawn I can use for something.
Yeah.
And like all I need is to like get them in a one-on-one and then make them feel good. And then boom, I have them again.
Yeah. It's
Sometimes it's for
giving
good, sometimes it's for innocent reasons, sometimes it's not. Just be aware.
it's giving narcissistic. It's giving like kind of like yeah, it's just giving like psychopathy a little bit. It's giving narcissistic. Like going back to the P. Diddy stuff, like there are people out there that want to like have their, do their thing, get their end goal, groom you, use you as a pawn, like you said, a little bit of psychopathy, a little bit of narcissistic. Like, Huberman's alluded to the fact that he's probably done psychedelics, but I think